first of all, maybe we could have Anna Lockwood, who is the Head of Market Development for Telstra, to come up. So thank you, Anna. So Jayant Shah, from Director of Technical Solutions from Dolby Solutions, Dolby Digital Solutions, I guess. Mr. Mehra from VTI, who's System Integrator. And Stephen Soenens from Skyline Data Miner. So have I missed anybody? Right. And basically, he's taking a picture. The chair of the session, Baskar, founder from Amagi, who will chair. These are IABM sessions, and what I'm pleased to say is that all of the participants on board work for IABM member companies. So we are the trade association that is representing broadcast and media. What this session is really focusing on is there's a lot of talk about IP, and I think in the last session, Baskar said, IP is such a broad phase. So this is anything but aims. This is about other uses of IP within the production and within the programming and the TV stations. So Baskar, if you could come up and then run with it, much appreciated. So,
okay, thank you very much, Peter. Yeah, can you folks come up if it's okay with you? You want to sit in the front seats? It's easier. Okay. Okay. So I know it's a hard session post lunch, but we'll try to make it entertaining as well as I think we'll try to make it informative and entertaining. We have a good panel today, and like what Peter talked about, we want to kind of let me just pull this off so that I can see all of you. Okay. So what we're going to talk about is how do we kind of leverage IP-based workflows in different scenarios and different situations. And we will talk about some of the specifics about how remote production happens, some of the experiences. I think we have a panel which is already experienced in those sort of capabilities. So we'll talk about remote production. We'll talk about security concerns in these sort of environments. We'll talk about cloud platforms and leveraging those capabilities from a virtualization standpoint. And we'll talk about how to even monitor and how to kind of control these capabilities in the IP scenarios. So we have a panel here that I'm going to introduce you to. So we have Anna Lockwood. She's Head of Market Development, Telstra, Broadcast Services. She's an experienced media industry executive, specializing in digital media and broadcast consulting. She works out of Sydney, and I think special mention, she's almost an Indian, I guess. That's what we discussed. She's been in India for the last 27 years prior to her Sydney, before she went to Sydney. And she's a board member of the SAMTI Australia section, as well as represents Telstra on the board of directors of the IABM. And I have Stephen Soenens is from Skyline Communication, known for their data miner product. He's an experienced professional in product marketing, management, and engineering of broadband and video solutions. He's now the product marketing head for Data Miner. Data Miner is the leading multi-vendor network management and OSS system. It's been deployed across thousands of customers already, and he's going to kind of do a presentation. Stephen, are you going to do a presentation today? Okay, okay. And prior to that, Stephen's been taking executive responsibility from a product strategy and product management perspective in Cisco and in Scientific Atlanta prior to that. And I have Mr. Narendra Mohan Mehra, who's the Vice President of Visual Technologies, VTI, which is popularly known in India. He's a known face in the industry, a vast experience in TV production and broadcast industry. He's a Doordarshan veteran, and he's retired from the post of Director of Engineering. So pretty well-known person in the Doordarshan ecosystem. He's worked in almost all fields of TV broadcasting, includes production, post-production, transmission, and contribution. And we're going to have him talk about experiences from an IP domain in their discipline today. And last but not least, I have Jayant. So Jayant Shah is the Director of Application and Solution Engineering, Emerging Markets for Dolby. He's been involved in the satellite and cable industry since its inception in the 90s, so he's a veteran in this particular field. Having spent several years in cable television as well as from smart TV. He's moved to broadcasting in the late 90s. He was in Nat Geo, National Geographic Channel, heading the engineering and operations functions in Delhi. And spent 3 years as the founder member and CTO of a digital media company called Tangerine Digital Entertainment. He's been in Dolby since early 2010 and is currently the Director of Application Solution Engineering for the emerging markets. Extensive experience in audio, and I think he's an audio expert, and that's something that I want to tap into today in our conversations. And broadcast audio and emerging field in the OTT services, connected and portable devices. Thank you very much, panel. You're all here. I think, Anna, you have a presentation. Maybe that's a good place to start, is my guess. Are you doing a keynote? No, you can start. We'll have more questions. It's easier.
Oh, that's great.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you could bring up the presentation.
The presentation's there.
Yeah. Thank you. So it's a great pleasure for me to be here in Delhi today. I'd like to acknowledge the fact that it's International Women's Day today. So especially a warm welcome to the women in the audience. It's great to see more Indian women be involved in media and broadcast. So thank you for attending this session, and we hope we'll make it a very interesting one. Today I'm just going to do a little bit of an introduction on a very interesting case study that we have recently done in Australia around an innovative sports network that was created to enable remote production workflows. So it's hot off the press. The network has just been completed, and so it's my pleasure to take you through today a few of the highlights of both the creation of the network and now how it's going to be deployed. I work inside Telstra. Telstra is a large Australian telecommunication and technology company. We are a very large brand in Australia, of course, but we also have a large international presence. And we have a specific or special interest in the Asia Pacific region. We have been in India for many years. We have about 200 people who work directly for Telstra in the Indian region. We've got 9 POPs, 9 points of presence in data centers in most of the major metros in India. And we have 2 major fiber landing stations, one in Chennai and one in Bombay, which is very well connected to the Asia Pacific region. The part of Telstra that I work in is called Telstra Broadcast Services. And we were formed about 5 years ago when Telstra, as a telco, decided to invest much more heavily in the media business. So we are a very new team inside of Telstra. We like to think of ourselves as a very innovative team that really pushes the convergence that we've been talking about today between a traditional telco with networks and platforms and infrastructure, and then on the media side, how do you use that for media workflows? So currently today, Telstra Broadcast Services has a very extensive global media network. We have broadcast operations with a state-of-the-art broadcast operations center in Sydney, which is a hybrid mix of SDI and moving more and more to a fully IP facility. We have global field operations that deploy around the world. And then we have a media sales and services team that also is around the world. And we are very privileged to work with many of the leading media companies around the world. And some of the logos are on the screen. So about a year ago, Fox Sports Australia came to us and said, we would like to do more live sports in Australia, and we would like to do more niche sports, so second-tier sports as well as tier 1 sports. And we would also like to do more women's sports. So very interestingly, the demand for live sports content was pushing this technology discussion with us. And the feedback that we got from them is there's 3 barriers to doing more live sports. Obviously, high operational costs of producing the sports, the high capital expenditure that you need to get into more and more centers in remote areas of Australia, and a lack of flexible, scalable production. So the question really became, how do you move from a dedicated OB van or control unit, housing your production staff, your technical equipment at each event around Australia, which is a very large land mass, to a network-driven remote production workflow that would meet this growing demand for live sporting coverage. The challenge really was to revolutionize the way sport is produced in Australia. And as a result, working very closely with Fox Sports, Telstra, using our existing network in the country, was able to create a new network called a Distributed Production Network, or DPN. And this was custom created for the sports and media industry. It is got 2 different flavors. In the metro areas, there's diverse paths of 50 gig that goes into the stadiums or the venues. And in the regional areas where they're less used, it's a dual 10 gig path. And the 2 production hubs were created in Melbourne and Sydney to actually host the production side of it. And the network reached from those 2 production hubs to 29 different venues around Australia. So what did this allow our customers to do? One is to enable live broadcasts at a distance from the actual event. It's an end-to-end IP network with A and B ingress. And of course, as was discussed in the earlier panel, you need the redundancy and the resiliency for high-value live sports content where you really cannot afford to miss a second. So talking about the scale of Australia, the distances are around 3,500 kilometers from Perth to Sydney. So we feel like, if we can make it work in Australia, we can pretty much make it work in any context that one might need, because it's such a vast distance. We started doing trials in October last year with soccer, which is the A-League in Australia. It's a second-tier sport in Australia. And we use 3 different venues as test venues. Data Miner is one of our partners in this, and Soren will also talk a little bit about the experiences of doing how he contributed to the testing and trialing. But it was absolutely cutting edge. This hasn't been done before at this size and scale with light compression, and there was a lot of R&D that was actually done during these tests. So a very exciting project for us to be involved in, and one where you're really bringing together many different vendors, many different partners, an extremely demanding customer in Fox Sports, and really trying to do something revolutionary or different for the industry. So the result was that we really were able to create or provide a flexible and scalable production environment. Fox Sports is going to do about 520 events a year. It is for live broadcast, but it also gives them a lot more flexibility to put content towards other platforms. So if you want to do an OTT delivery with different cameras where the viewer at home can look at different cameras, second screen interactions, it becomes a very nice way to do this through the remote production workflows. And as well to their websites and the different forms of digital distribution. Now that we have the distributed production network, we are, of course, talking with other clients in Australia about how we can help them with their workflows. And we're also working very closely with the large sporting events that happen around the world to make sure that we can support remote production for mega sporting events that take place in different places around the world. So really, what we set out to do was create the possibility of offering more live sport for audiences around the world, helping broadcasters cover niche sports, helping broadcasters cover women's sports, and just having the opportunity to do more sports across the board. So with that, I'll hand back to the chair, and I'll be happy to field any questions during the course of the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks, Anna. Thank you very much. I think that's a good segue into the conversation that we can have today. Sure. Mr. Mehra, can you introduce VTI for all of us?
Oh, yes. I do have a small presentation.
You do have? That'll be great, sir.
Few, I mean, it is not about VTI,
okay.
but the subject.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah. Right.
I think it's on.
Yeah,
hello.
Yes.
You see, my name is Narendra Mehra, already introduced. I'm working for a company called Visual Technology India Private Limited. Visual Technology India Private Limited is in this field from last 22 years. And we are distributing the production, post-production, and transmission equipment to the industry. And now we are working as a system integrator also, and we have given many projects to the industry. One of that, which I will mention in continuation to her presentation, that we did 2 10-camera OB vans, large, big vans, about 14 meters, which we have supplied to Doordarshan. One of that is deployed by Doordarshan Delhi, which is being used for all the VIP coverages from the last 3.5 years or 4 years. And the second one is at Mumbai. And these vans were equipped with 10 cameras, which can be, you can add on 4 or 6 camera more to it, and with super slow motion systems, and the state-of-art Dolby recording provisions. So we take pride out of that. Beside that, yes, we are doing many projects. Almost all the TV channels are working. We are working with almost all the TV channels in India. This is what is there all about VTI. Yes, as far as the subject is concerned, I don't know, most of you, how many out of you are with the television production or post-production? So I think our subject is mostly related to that, right? May I use? Yes. No. Any. आ गया? Okay. No, the other one. Yes, you can open this for me. No, you want to keep here? Then I will give you another one. Okay. No, I want to go for. No, I'm not getting my notes. Two screen. One screen is here. I want to go for the notes. Two screen. दोनों पे आए notes भी दिखा देना. So I already talked about this. I can keep. My subject is it just all about IP? I mean to say, as far as the broadcasting is concerned, how far is the IP is there? IP we know is widely used in the industry. As far as IP usage in the broadcasting is concerned, it is used for the controlling the equipment, for remotely operating the equipment, for configuring the equipment, and for the almost all the equipment like used for the broadcasting and post-production, IP is there. Whether it is studio camera, integrated robotic cameras, routers, intercom, production switchers, satellite broadcasting equipment, video servers, editing suites, backpack, list is very long. Yes, as far as IP control and IP remote operation is concerned, industry is full of that. But if you talk of video or media over IP, yes, that is new, not that new. As we know, video over IP, YouTube is the pioneer. They started long time back. And beside that, now we have so many things which are coming on IP, that is web TV channels are there, web news channels are there, e-learning is there, webinars are there, demos of the equipment is there on the IP, and corporate trainings are there on the IP. And in addition to that, in the entertainment, Netflix is there, Amazon is there. So many things are happening on IP. But of course, I mean to say, if I give that broadly, I can divide that into internet video or web video, IPTV, which is of course not in that much in India, then mobile TV, which we see on our cell phones. It's having another flavor of DVB terrestrial transmission also. But I think here we are not to discuss all this because it's all existing. What we have to discuss about is that SDI over IP. That is the digital video signal uncompressed over the IP or professional media over IP. We know this SDI, that is serial digital interface, is fully matured, universally used for the standard definition, high definition, both for interlaced as well as for progressive, 4K and even for 8K. But industry is looking for harvesting the advantage of IP. What are the advantages? That flexibility of operation. Because If you are using SDI for control, you will be requiring Cat5 or serial data cable. For video, you will be requiring BNCs. For audio, you will be requiring another interface. So multiple interface, multiple connectors are used. IP will bring it down to single connector, single cable. Independence from the formats, because we know in industry compression is used for recording and playbacks. So different type of formats are available. Formats are not compatible to each other. But with IP, because now it will be software driven thing, so as a result of that, it will make the system independent of IP. So compatibility issue will not be there. It will allow you to put file-based content as well as live content on the same line. Reduction in the capital cost is being talked about. And above that all, they are looking forward some sort of automation in the television production. I mean to say sports coverages will be very easy to put on automation. When they can devise the software where when the goal has happened, how automatically it will be played back in the super slow motion or whatsoever the way we want, and from different angle as you have stated, because now the trend is to show sports from the different angle by using multiple cameras, which Anna has already touched upon. Now, efforts to do this are on from 2013 or 14 onward. And there are so many things which have come into the market and talked about, conflicting solutions like ASPN, NMI, SMPT 2022, etc., etc. But very recently, you can say 2017 or 16, late 16, an alliance for the IP media solution along with the SMPT has brought a standard, which is a set of standards, which is called SMPT 2110. It's a set of standards which is looking like now that it will be universally accepted, and most of the broadcaster will accept it, and it may become a universal standard which will be replacing the SDI, which will be replacing the BNC. Acceptance of this standard in the industry has been accelerated. Deployment of the IP infrastructure in the workflow of all sizes during the 2017. But of course, in India, we are not talking about it at this stage, as I will speak in the coming slides. Why we are not doing it, we'll discuss. Basically, SMPT 2110 is based upon ST 20226, in which audio stream is put separately, not multiplexed, because they believe that already IP means multiplexing is already available there. So each stream, that is the video stream, that is the audio stream, that is the ANC ancillary data stream, these streams are kept separately, and you can route them together on the same timeline. Yes. Putting all this, you will be requiring, big bandwidths. So SMPT 2110 has given one more, added one more thing in it, that you can use mezzanine compressions. Compression which are interframe, mild. So something like TICO, which is 4:1 compression. Remote production is possible. It is more flexible and efficient. Auto provisioning, achieving automation, which I have touched upon earlier also. And it will make the same infrastructure to be shareable at the different scales. Yes, they are looking for the virtualization and supporting the cloud architect in the future. And distributed on-demand workflows also. And the best part of this standard is that it allows you to make use of the COTS. COTS means commercially available off-the-shelf IT equipment. I'm going to say earlier, about 3 years back, 10G was and aggregated 10G data rate was the maximum which could be achieved, but now it is 25G or about 100 GB aggregated interfaces are available, which is making it possible to work for the 4K UHD. File-based workflows, it is okay to use COTS for the file-based workflows. But for live broadcasting, it's a switch, an IT switch. If it fails, it will bring disaster. Then latency or buffered connection are also the issue which has to be addressed. Of course, they say that by making use of the COTS IT-based equipment, the price will come down, but at what cost? I understand that the very first customer who will be deploying the large-scale COTS infrastructure will bear the risk and the loss due to learning curves. Will be learning by his own mistakes. So with this, I open the house to make discussion and to take forward if how it will be implemented in India. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. I think you let the cat among the pigeons, but yeah, I think that's a good start, I guess. Thank you for that. I think, Stephen, I think given Anna's presentation in terms of sports and post-production sports and remotely handling that, I think you folks have been involved. Can you share some of the experiences from that project in terms of really monitoring the whole infrastructure and having some sort of a support structure in place? What was your challenges and how that kind of panned out?
Yes, so as Anna already explained it's been a kind of an engineering project to get everything up and running. As it is with many and all new technologies that enter the market, people start to deploy small-scale deployments in a lab environment or controlled environment, but bringing that and scaling that new technology up into a real-life production is yet another step to take. So what we learned in the process is, first of all, we work together with engineers from our customer, which is Telstra. So good cooperation is important to understand the difficulties that may go wrong. I think we spent some time into really defining in all levels of detail the workflows. How do you actually set up an IP stream from point A to B or to multiple points? There's many ways to route IP streams. You can have source-based switching, destination-based switching. You can have the switching happening in the network with static multicast groups or other technologies. There's all pros and cons to each one of them. So we selected one of those technologies and we brought it to work. But we had to learn a little bit the pros and the cons and learn along the way. The important thing and the lesson learned there is to have good understanding of all partners on the table and have flexible solutions to adapt to changes. Instead of having a fixed workflow system, having something like a data miner that can adjust was very important, I think. The other thing is, as I learned as well in the project, but also with other customers, are the security aspects. IP networks by nature are open and more vulnerable to coaxial or SDI-based networks. That's the nature of IP. So having simple mechanisms as part of the workflows reduce the threat significantly. Thinking very simple things like if a IP port is not supposed to be used at a given moment in time, just turn the admin status down. set up the access control lists on the aggregation routers. These are very simple things to automate in a system like Data Miner. It's just a matter of identifying those and implementing those. So I think learning from real experiences shows that operators, even very experienced and skilled operators like Telstra, are still also learning and working together to implement those workflows along the way is probably the most important thing. And I'm sure that as the workflows already are operational today, next year those same or similar workflows are probably going to be a little different to make them more secure and more reliable.
Interesting, Stephen, interesting, right? And again, taking point from Mr. Mehra's stuff, and I just want to share an experience of something which is pretty audacious from a broadcasting standpoint that we tried, is there's a Nidahans event, cricketing event that's happening right now, which is the India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh event, right? So Amagi, the company that I work for, really is handling the whole play out of the whole channel. And the channel is actually, the contribution feed is coming from Sri Lanka. Obviously, the matches are happening in Sri Lanka. We're downlinking in Hong Kong, where the production of the logos, the graphics, the ad insertions, everything's happening in Hong Kong, but no human exists there. It's controlled from Bangalore. And interestingly, we had to do a 6-language commentary for this particular feed. So the English feed comes as part of the contribution, but we had 5 other commentary to be created. So we took the clean feed back into Noida, here in Delhi, to one other service provider, where they do the commentary, and the commentary gets mixed back again into the video stream, and then it uplinks to the whole of a nation here through a satellite. And everything was controlled from Bangalore, just like, so nothing exists in Bangalore except a web browser through which we had to do this. So it was kind of, it kind of exposed a lot of challenges in terms of IP-based streams, and not only about control, but about timing and synchronization between audio and video, which is going to be a big challenge in some sense, right? I thought that's kind of, I think we're in a rudimentary stage of a remote production environment, which is going to be so stripped apart that you're going to have audio coming from different locations. For all you know, all the analytics and the analysis of sports, graphics coming from different locations. The event itself is in a very different locations. And kind of you're going to mix and match all of that in some sort of a virtualized environment before you really start transmission, for example. So that's sort of the world that we're going towards in some sense. I'll come back to you, Mr. in terms of discussing that. But I think, Jayant, in this context, you folks obviously been in the kind of leading position in terms of IP audio and how you folks are looking at it. What would be, if you could share your experiences in a remote production challenge, the challenges of remote production, where in the sort of scenario I was trying to elucidate of where commentaries could come from different locations, completely remote. What I'm saying is truly remote in that sense of audio, video, and the source of different things coming together in some sense. Can you share some of your experiences in terms of, in an IP context, in an audio context? That'll be interesting to hear your thoughts, Jayant.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, we've been in the audio business for quite a long time, over 50 years. A large part of it in cinema, now in broadcast. So, the IP-based remote production stuff began about, I think, a couple of years ago when people started playing around with, can we do this? Can we save money by not shipping hundreds of people and tons of equipment around? One of the big challenges in India, which is different from many parts of the world, is that we don't use trucks. I know Mr. Mehra's given, produced a few OB trucks, but there are very, very few OB vans, OB trucks actually in India. Most of sports production is done using what we call flyaway kits. It's basically a bunch of equipment in flight cases and big trunks, which we carry from one place to the other, and then we spend a couple of days rigging it, do a match, de-rig the whole thing, put it back in boxes and ship it. So this, from an audio perspective, Dolby, does surround sound, and now we're doing immersive audio. Some of you guys may have seen movies in the new Dolby Atmos format. So as you go to more and more complex audio production, you need space and you need monitoring and you need a fairly elaborate setup to actually produce that. And carrying that stuff from one stadium to the other becomes really complex. So remote production became logical for us to try and centralize that infrastructure in one studio somewhere, which is permanent, and then connect up everything. But India has its own set of challenges in terms of connectivity. Stadium connectivity wasn't available. The telcos didn't have. I think we've had enough discussion about regulation and different departments within government causing all kinds of obstructions. But those are the kind of infrastructural challenges that need to be addressed. Now we've reached a point where that is doable to some extent, and we are able to produce a fairly well-equipped, very central studio which can do elaborate immersive audio and personalization and all kinds of new tricks, especially the multiple commentaries. In the UK, people are looking at home and away commentaries, because commentary which is biased towards one team or the other, because it's possible now to do so many different versions of commentary, right? And all this has been made possible largely because you can do this remotely using various IP workflows. But just from an infrastructure point of view and where we are, and this fear of IP that exists in the broadcast world, we are still looking at black boxes at the ingest point, which take an SDI signal and then encapsulate the whole thing into IP and send it out. Audio has jumped out of that. With AES 67, I mean, again, AES 67 is a minimum spec which is designed to make things interoperable, but does not give you everything that you want. It doesn't identify what audio channel is where. It does not allow discovery. It doesn't allow control. For that, you still need proprietary protocols like Ravenna or Dante or whatever, which all add on to AES 67. But the video part, SDI, is still not split into what Mr. Mehra was talking about, the ancillary signals and video and audio all being three separate things wrapped around with a timing protocol and then going to separate places on IP. We haven't quite got there yet. We are still sending SDI encapsulated 2022.6, I think, is standard. 2110 just came out. I think it was January. Compressed audio, just from an audio perspective, compressed audio is still not a part of it. It's uncompressed audio right now. We are still waiting for the compressed audio standard to come out, which hopefully will be out before NAB. So hold your breath, people, any day now. So from an audio perspective, I think remote production allows us to do a lot more complex things. It allows us to do multiple commentaries, to do immersive, to do personalization, to add data to audio streams. There's a whole new world is opening up over there from an audio perspective. So it's great news from our perspective, because simply lugging things around, again, I need to train a lot less people to be able to do this. You need two guys sitting in one location to do this work. Otherwise, you need 4 crews being shunted around madly from one place to the other. If you take something like the Olympics or maybe Football World Cup or even IPL, there are multiple crews being kicked around all over the place. They have a fairly hectic life for a few months. But remote production simplifies a lot of that. The cameramen still have to run around. From a pure IP workflow perspective, I think we are far away, in India at least, we are far away from having just the camera sitting over there and the control of that camera being remote. I don't think we are still sending entire SDI signals. We are not sending control and data from one place to the other, which is what Baskar was talking about, true remote production. That's not quite there yet. We are just shuffling all the signals back to a central facility and then having the director sitting over there with the switcher. Right.
Interesting, Jayant. One thought that I wanted all of you to kind of comment on is, right, at the bottom level, if you look at from a consumer standpoint, we're seeing a lot of live event capture systems coming in, right? Be it Periscope, be it Facebook Live. So you're going to see a bunch of rudimentary tools and technologies, which is consumer-centric. Not the greatest quality, that's not their intention, but it's really a peer-to-peer platforms which are kind of evolving to become a multi-viewing platform in some sense, from a broadcasting standpoint. And on the other end, we're talking about SMT 2022.6, getting to 2110, and then kind of bringing down that from a infrastructure standpoint. Do any of you folks feel that would consumer technology start to really evolve to a point where they become good enough in some sense? And that's the fear that I always have from a paranoia perspective is, would consumers start to agree with some of this, not from a post-production and a high-end match standpoint. But if you're looking at the next tier of mid-tier or even the lower end of sports and events, for example, which is kind of today an unaddressed market in some sense, because neither these technologies are too expensive for these people to address it, nor these technologies at the bottom have not really evolved to a point for the maturity that can address these capabilities, for example. What would be your thoughts fundamentally because you are an august panel of you folks understand the experiences. What were your thoughts do you see and how do you foresee environments where do you see the consumer technology starting to catch up good enough for consumers that some of these standards before they really kind of trickle down to a point of being comfortable from an audience standpoint? Are we seeing a kind of a transitionary path where consumer technology is starting to become better and better, faster than an industry-driven approach, which seemed to always kind of take longer, both from not from a bureaucracy standpoint as much as really coming together and being able to do that? Mr. Mehra, you can start with a comment and maybe you can go through that.
You see, if as you have given the example of the Facebook or many more social medias, if we look there, they are way ahead. I want to say, if you talk about 360 virtual cameras or live coming from the Facebook, in broadcasting, yes, we are looking from the Indian perspective. Yes, we are very far. I mean, it will be taking long for us to reach to that level. But yes. At the same time, I would like to say this, that examples which have been given that we are making use of production now by sending the signals through satellite, receiving at some location, then doing video editing there, then mixing some audio there, and then for audio we are sending it somewhere else, and that type of thing we are doing. But of course we are doing by using satellite, it means compression. So that is why people are talking of video over IP. That is why people are talking about SDI over IP, where less compression or mezzanine compression or no compression will be used. But as the question is that whether the industry will evolve to that type of practices which are being followed for the consumer electronics, my experience is yes, it will come. It will come, but how it will come, that has to be seen. But yes, as on date, especially for the sports, people are talking of multiple camera angles. People are saying, okay, if the goal has happened and I'm showing in a slow motion, it can be shown from the different angles, from the different point of view. It is happening. It is happening. I want to say worldwide it is happening. But how far it will be happening in our country, as Jayant has already stated, that we are lagging behind in that field totally here. We are mostly depending upon equipment to be transported from one location to another location. We are not making use of big, large OB vans. Our roads are not that good enough to support that type of vans, that type of widths of the van. So there are many questions in that way.
Understood, sir. Understood. Any other comments on that question, Jayant?
I'm happy to just give a slightly different perspective. From a services provider perspective, I mean, these are, no, I have this one here. These are great partners for all of our broadcaster customers. From a distribution perspective, you will certainly see sports that never make it onto a traditional TV channel go out on Facebook, on Twitter, on Twitch. I think that is, from a consumer perspective, that's very exciting because you may not be able to watch an esports game on a traditional channel in India, but you can certainly see the broadcast that either Telstra or other service providers are helping with, that anyone can watch on their mobile device through Facebook and through Twitter, through Twitch. So to me, the more the merrier, the more distribution pathways we have to the consumer, the more sports we'll all be able to watch.
That's true. That's true. Jayant, you had a point?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it was interesting you were talking about experiences, you know, and the whole point is that we as a company have always focused on the end user experience, you know, whether it's in cinema or whether it's on TV or, you know, home theater, surround sound, that kind of stuff. So, you know, now that things are moving to laptops and you know, mobile devices, so we've been trying to figure out or working on technologies that allow virtualization of that immersive. You know, Mr. Mehra spoke about 360-degree video. We are trying to do the same thing with audio, in the sense that you make the audio immersive, you move the guy into the stadium. Now you can do this with a bunch of speakers and a whole big huge home theater system, but can you do it with someone with a phone and headphones? I guess you can, and that's the whole point, you know, that we have taken virtualization to the point where laptop speakers can be made to sound pretty immersive, and if you have headphones, then it's a whole different world. You know, you can do perfectly deep immersive audio using headphones, and it's the same audio stream that comes out of production, which is being used in broadcast or in cinema right now. It's the same stream can be encoded to work on cell phones and, you know, on headphones. You don't need any fancy gear. You just need a decoder. Well, of course, you need our decoder, but you know how it is.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Tim, you had any point on that?
Yeah, maybe one addition to it, and I agree with your initial point there. It's all about good enough, which means good enough for the purpose. I mean, all of us travel a lot, and if you turn on the TV set in the morning, the majority of the content is user-generated content. It's regional content taken by smartphones or whatever phones that are there, and everybody's watching because it's just very good content and it's good enough quality for that type of programs on the TV set. So I definitely am a strong believer that broadcast networks should not necessarily exist out of high professional broadcast equipment. So from that perspective, I fully agree. If you look into the networks itself, like fixed broadcast networks, I don't think we'll see consumer equipment in there, like laptop computers or anything like that. It's more going to be enterprise-style network switches and computer and server infrastructure that's going to be there. And that works perfectly fine as long as they're managed and deployed in a proper way in terms of redundancy and capacity management.
Interesting. Because I remember a couple of IBCs back, I think it's almost more than a couple of years back, is one small university students actually demonstrating 6 iPhone cameras set on a basketball court. And the whole court was live streamed and then live edited by machines. So essentially, the simple logic of saying whichever camera position provided you the best coverage of the ball was considered as editing. So the editing was completely automated in some sense. So it's kind of pretty interesting because some of these nifty, nice technologies, then as they kind of start becoming better and better, to a point it might start to really be good enough for everybody else. Then are we seeing, so it kind of this mix and match of consumer technologies with some of what we do in broadcasting might be an interesting mix, is what was my thought process in that front, actually. I guess we could get into some questions. Maybe that'll be, I think we've had a fairly good conversation, Mr. Jayant. Yeah.
Hello. I have 2 questions, one for Mr. Baskar and one for Mr. Jayant. So, first thing I would like to know that when their match, you have said that it was played in Sri Lanka and processed in Singapore and then Hong Kong, and here it is added. I want to understand that what was the link between Sri Lanka to Hong Kong via satellite?
Satellites.
Or fiber?
Satellite.
It was satellite. It means the compressed stream.
Correct.
Was it data, all compressed data or compressed?
It was, in this scenario, it's all compressed.
All compressed.
Yeah,
okay.
Correct, exactly.
So the full transponder, or what kind of bit rate you have used for one channel?
I think it was about 20 megabits per second.
20 per channel.
Per channel.
Okay. Another for Mr. Jayant, I want to know when you have talked about the immersive audio on headphones and mobiles. So in headphones, is it possible to have that kind of effect, immersive audio, when the headphone is not fully closed. There are some headphones which are just speaking about near to your ear, but it is not blocking the ambient sound.
So yes, so
we can hear the other sound also.
Correct, that's true. Now the degree of, you're talking about the isolation from the real world, really.
Yeah.
So obviously you need fully acoustically isolated phones if you really completely want to immerse yourself, which means you want to totally ignore everybody in the room, be completely antisocial, which many people are now these days. You know, it's hard to get through to a kid sitting in a room with his phone. You can't talk to them. So yes, I mean, so at the end of the day, the question is, you have only 2 ears, right?
Yes.
And all the immersive audio that you hear in real life is through 2 little holes in our head.
Yes.
And if you can somehow fool your head into believing that everything that you hear from here, there, behind you or above you is, you know, your brain actually figures out where that audio is coming from by using simple techniques of, it comes to the left ear a little before the right ear, so it must be on the left. Now, if you can, there's actually a mathematical formula that does this. It's called the head transfer function, which calculates, you know, how audio goes around the head. So if we want to really get into that, we can. But what I'm saying is that with 2 sound sources, you can actually create a virtualization which can convince the brain into believing that it's actually sitting in the stadium. And again, the isolation question, yes, you need a degree of isolation to be able. If you can hear the ambient room, and if that room is noisy, then obviously your experience will be less, you know, immersive.
Maybe less, but it should happen.
Yes, it will happen.
Because the person, sometimes we feel that we should not be cut off from the ambience.
Absolutely. So it will still happen.
Sometimes that is also important.
Yes, but the degree of immersion depends on how much you want to cut yourself off from reality.
That's an issue, different issue.
Correct.
But it should happen even if it
Yes, it happens.
Thank you.
What's the next question? Anybody? Peter.
I mean, we have a data miner here, of course, but how do you think big data is going to change things in the broadcast field?
It's still a little bit unknown, I think, but I can explain a little bit. We're working on already today. First of all, we're using big data in the first place to increase service quality and uptime of broadcasters and service providers. So we capture a lot of data from the origin of where the content is created up to the level of the consumption devices, so to speak. We capture a lot of data in terms of statistics, performance, anything you can think of, and we try to do things with that data. We try to predict how the quality is evolving. We try to predict when the quality is not going to be sufficient anymore. We try to learn what that means, good or bad quality. We try also to learn things like environmental impressions on the service quality. What is contributing to a good service quality and what is not contributing to it. And it can be just about anything. So we take a lot of environmental situations into account to also operate the network on a day-to-day basis. Could be simple things like who was working on a certain location yesterday. Could be other things like what is the service, what is the service provider, what is the contract number. So anything you can think of in an operational and business environment, we take into account to automatically identify proactively issues as they may pop up. So we make a lot of investments into that area.
Just to add to it, Peter, just from a video standpoint, right? Some of our experience has been pretty fascinating in some sense, right? For example, we have built some of the neural network systems today which can identify what's an ad, what's a content. It's almost like a 3-year child that it can start to identify. So we've kind of trained it with tens and thousands of hours of advertising content and advertising and content separately. So it's able to, and it's with 95% accuracy, it's able to identify every ad in any of the television streams across the globe. So whatever we work with today, it's able to identify exactly at least 5 seconds of that advertising. It's able to tell you that it's actually an ad. And that's happened because the network's been growing with a lot of data to help it to do that. Obviously, news channels are the hardest in India to handle that. Too much of action and too much of things. Everything looks like an advertising in India. News channels are as that, right? So other than news, it works pretty well for all other genres today. But that's one kind of a use case where we've used big data pretty heavily. But these are all video learning systems that kind of evolved. That's one example.
I'd just say also, it takes me back, I was with Anna in London at a conference, a sports conference, and the Lawn Tennis Association, who've taken control of the coverage of Wimbledon, basically use the analytics to cover matches that they would not be able to cover. What I mean is maybe it's the junior matches where they look at how much clapping from the crowd, the length of the game and so forth, and then they do the edits from that. So pretty interesting coverage where they wouldn't be able to afford the basic people to do all the cutting and cover those matches. So there's a lot of uses. Anyway, thank you.
Any other questions from anybody else? Okay, I guess we are on time, I guess. Thank you very much, panel. Thank you very much, all of you. And it was a great conversation. And thank you for all of you to listen to it. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you to all of you for your valuable time and remarks. May I please request Mr. Baskar to hand over a token of appreciation to all the speakers? Amir? You all are requested to have tea with us. We'll be breaking for tea, and after 15 minutes, we'll start our next session.